War films are everywhere, but naval dramas? They're a different beast altogether. On the open sea, there's no room to run, no place to hide, just endless water and the pressure of survival. That's why the classics from the 1,950 seconds to the 1,970 seconds still hit harder than many glossy modern blockbusters. But which of these seabound tales actually hold up after all these decades? Let's dive in and uncover the ones that still pull you right into the storm. The Cruel Sea, 1,953. Picture this: Britain, in the early 1,950 seconds, still scarred by the war, and audiences sitting down to watch a film that didn't sugarcoat anything. The Cruel Sea doesn't give you glamorous heroes with perfect hair and shiny uniforms. Instead, it gives you the grind, the gray seas, and the kind of moral weight that leaves you uneasy. Based on Nicholas Montserrat's novel, the movie follows the crew of HMS Compass Rose, a corvette tasked with hunting submarines during the Battle of the Atlantic. The star here isn't just Jack Hawkins in his commanding role, it's the sea itself. The film treats the ocean like a character, unforgiving, relentless, and absolutely indifferent to the men aboard the ship. You can almost taste the salt spray and feel the deck tilt under your feet as depth charges thunder below. And unlike many wartime dramas that lean heavily on big speeches or flag waving, The Cruel Sea zeroes in on the psychological exhaustion of escort duty. Imagine weeks of scanning empty horizons, knowing danger could erupt at any second. What makes this one endure is its refusal to romanticize. There's a gut punch of a moment when a ship full of survivors is spotted, but attacking the lurking submarine means leaving them behind. That's not the kind of neat, tied-up storytelling audiences we're used to in the 1,950 seconds. It was bold, it was bleak, and it still feels painfully honest today. Why does it hold up? Because it speaks to something universal. Strip away the time period, and you've got a story about ordinary people forced to make impossible choices, carrying scars no metal can erase. It's a reminder that the sea doesn't care who's right or wrong, it just takes its toll. The Caine Mutiny, 1,954. Now let's swing from stormy decks to the tense atmosphere of a courtroom. Few naval dramas pack the psychological punch of the Caine Mutiny. Released in 1954 and starring Humphrey Bogart in one of his most haunting late-career performances, the film takes us on a journey that's less about torpedoes and more about the human mind under crushing pressure. Here's the setup. The USS Caine is a battered old minesweeper, captained by Bogart's Lieutenant Commander Queeg. From the moment he steps on screen fiddling nervously with those infamous steel ball bearings, you know this isn't your typical Hollywood captain. Queeg is paranoid, rigid, and clearly unraveling. His crew, led by Van Johnson and Fred McMurray, begin to question whether his decisions are more dangerous than the enemy itself. What follows is part sea story, part legal thriller. The mutiny itself is brief, but the fallout unfolds in a courtroom where officers must justify their choices while facing the uncomfortable reality of mental collapse at sea. Bogart, normally the ultimate cool-headed tough guy, flips the script and delivers a performance so unsettling it still gets under your skin. The trial scenes strip away the glamour of command and force the audience to ask a tough question. When does loyalty end and responsibility begin? The brilliance of the Caine Mutiny is its refusal to give easy answers. Was Queeg unfit for duty, or were the officers too quick to judge? Did fear of humiliation push the crew into action? Decades later, those questions still sting because they're bigger than one ship or one war. They're about leadership, responsibility, and how thin the line can be between discipline and disaster. Why does it hold up? Because it doesn't hide behind spectacle. Instead, it puts human weakness on trial, and that's a battle as timeless as the sea itself. Even now, you can watch Queeg's breakdown and feel the tension in your own gut. Run Silent, Run Deep, 1,958. By the late 50 seconds, audiences were hungry for tension, and Run Silent, Run Deep delivered it in spades. This isn't just another submarine yarn, it's a duel of wills between two powerhouse actors, Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster, locked inside the steel coffin of a U.S. sub during the Pacific Campaign. The story, based on Edward L. Beach's novel, is straightforward on the surface. Gable plays Commander Richardson, obsessed with sinking a specific enemy destroyer that once destroyed his former boat. Lancaster's Lieutenant Bledsoe doesn't trust him, setting the stage for a clash that's as riveting as any depth-charge sequence. What makes the movie timeless isn't just the explosions in the dark ocean or the claustrophobic interiors. It's the battle of obsession versus duty. Gable, near the end of his career, projects weary authority with a dangerous edge, while Lancaster burns with youthful defiance. The tension between them is electric, and every order feels like it could tip the crew into mutiny. Director Robert Wise keeps the action tight and the drama tighter. The underwater photography, limited by 1,950 seconds technology, somehow enhances the mood. You feel the press of the ocean around you, the silence before the inevitable boom of a depth charge. The title isn't just catchy, it's the philosophy of submarine warfare. Stay quiet, stay alive, strike when no one expects it. Why does it hold up? Because it plays like a chess match at sea. Strip away the uniforms, and it's about ego, pride, and obsession clashing in a pressure cooker. The ocean may be vast, but run silent, run deep proves the real battlefield is often no bigger than the cramped interior of a submarine. Sink the Bismarck, 1960. If Run Silent, Run Deep was about claustrophobia, Sink the Bismarck is about scale. Released in 1960, this British classic dramatizes one of the most legendary naval hunts of World War II, the Royal Navy's relentless pursuit of Germany's monster battleship, the Bismarck. Even if you don't know your naval history, you've probably heard the name. This ship wasn't just big, it was the nightmare of Allied shipping. The film follows the Royal Navy's command center as they piece together intelligence, make split-second decisions, and throw everything they have at bringing down this behemoth. Kenneth More stars as Captain Shepard, the stiff upper-lip strategist coordinating the effort, while Dana Winter adds a human touch as the WREN officer, working alongside him. On the surface, it's a war procedural, but underneath, it's a ticking clock thriller. Every time the Bismarck moves, the Allies scramble to box it in. What makes it work even today is its blend of realism and suspense. There's no romanticizing here. The film sticks to the facts and still manages to wring out edge-of-your-seat drama. From the sinking of HMS Hood, which shocked Britain, to the climactic showdown in the Atlantic, the stakes feel crushingly real. And the black and white cinematography, instead of making it look dated, actually adds grit. Why does it hold up? Because Sink the Bismarck isn't just about ships, it's about obsession, fear, and determination against overwhelming odds. You don't need flashy effects when the story itself is this gripping. It's the definition of old-school tension, the kind that still resonates long after the credits roll. The Longest Day, 1962. At first glance, you might wonder what The Longest Day is doing on a list of naval dramas. Isn't it about D-Day? Absolutely. But without the naval element, there is no D-Day. This 1962 epic, featuring what feels like half of Hollywood and half of Europe's acting talent, captures the chaos of the 6th of June, 1944. While the airborne drops and infantry charges get most of the attention, the naval sequences are the backbone of the invasion. Think about it. Thousands of ships massed in the channel, destroyers laying down covering fire, landing craft ferrying troops to shore under relentless fire. The film doesn't skip over this. It shows the sheer scale of the armada, the coordination required, and the cold reality of soldiers relying on naval guns to keep them alive. John Wayne, Richard Burton, Henry Fonda. The cast list reads like a roll call of legends, but it's the ships and sailors in the background that give the film its spine. Shot in stark black and white, the movie feels almost documentary-like, hammering home the logistical nightmare of the invasion. The naval element isn't flashy. It's functional, brutal, and essential. Watching the warships pound the beaches and landing craft churn through the surf, you get a sense of just how fragile the entire operation was. One slip, one delay, and the whole thing could have collapsed. Why does it hold up? Because it doesn't just show a battle, it shows a system, an invasion so massive and complex that it boggles the mind. And the ships, the sailors, the sea itself, they weren't extras. They were the difference between success and disaster. In The Longest Day, the Navy doesn't just support the story, it is the story. The Bedford Incident, 1965. Cold War thrillers usually leaned on spies and shadowy backroom deals, but the Bedford Incident takes that icy paranoia straight onto the deck of a destroyer. Released in 1965, this film plays like a slow-burning nightmare, where the real enemy isn't necessarily the other side, it's human arrogance. Richard Widmark stars as Captain Finlander, a man so rigid, so uncompromising, that you can feel the crew's nerves fraying, scene by scene. Add Sidney Poitier as a civilian journalist on board, and you've got a powder keg just waiting for a spark. The setup is deceptively simple. A U.S. destroyer shadows a submarine in the icy Atlantic, waiting, watching, pressing. The tension doesn't come from explosions, but from words, glances, and the unbearable weight of decisions. Widmark's Finlander is the kind of captain who believes hesitation is weakness, while his crew is trapped in the claustrophobic cycle of drill after drill. By the time things spiral, you're practically begging someone to slam the brakes, but no one does. What makes this film timeless is how it mirrors the Cold War mindset. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and the consequences could be catastrophic. And when the climax finally arrives, it's less about surprise and more about inevitability. You saw it coming, you dreaded it, and that's what makes it sting. Why does it hold up? Because it's a psychological time bomb that still feels frighteningly relevant. Strip away the uniforms, and it's about leaders pushing too far, too fast, and everyone else paying the price. In the Bedford Incident, the ocean is cold, the politics are colder, and humanity is the real weak link. In Harm's Way, 1965, when Otto Preminger decides to make a naval epic, you can bet it won't be small. In Harm's Way is sprawling, star-packed, and drenched in melodrama. But underneath the glossy Hollywood sheen is a surprisingly gritty take on duty and redemption. Released in 1965, it stars John Wayne as Admiral Rock Torrey, a career officer who finds himself sidelined after Pearl Harbor, but clawing his way back into relevance as the war grinds on. This isn't a lean thriller. It's an old-fashioned epic that mixes massive battle scenes with intimate drama. You've got Wayne trying to balance command with personal mistakes, Kirk Douglas simmering as a conflicted subordinate, and Patricia Neal grounding the story with warmth and dignity. The naval sequences are staged with grandeur, from torpedo attacks to night battles, and while some effects may show their age, the sheer ambition makes them unforgettable. What's fascinating is how the movie dares to show its heroes as flawed. Wayne's Torrey isn't invincible. He's tired, stubborn, and carrying regrets. Kirk Douglas's character, meanwhile, is haunted by his own demons, making for a subplot that's darker than you might expect from a mid-60 seconds war drama. The combination of personal struggles and large-scale action makes it stand apart from the more straightforward heroics of the era. Why does it hold up? Because it's unapologetically big, messy, and human. Sure, the pacing is old school, but the mix of spectacle and personal drama means you're never just watching ships clash. You're watching lives unravel and rebuild under impossible pressure. In Harm's Way, the battles may rage at sea, but the fiercest storms are inside the characters themselves. The Sand Pebbles, 1966. Now here's a naval drama that doesn't just tell a story, it immerses you in a whole different world. The Sand Pebbles, released in 1966, put Steve McQueen front and center as Jake Holman, a rebellious engineer serving aboard a U.S. gunboat patrolling China's Yangtze River in the 1920 seconds. Technically, it's not a World War II film, but its naval backdrop, themes of duty, and raw tension make it impossible to leave off this list. From the moment Holman steps aboard the USS San Pablo, you know you're in for something different. Instead of the usual battle-focused narrative, the drama unfolds in the simmering clash between cultures, ideologies, and personalities. McQueen's Holman is no polished hero. He's blunt, stubborn, and deeply human, the kind of character who bristles against authority while quietly carrying his own sense of honor. The beauty of the Sand Pebbles lies in its layers. On the surface, you've got tense gunboat patrols and the looming threat of conflict. Beneath that, you've got a sharp critique of imperialism, the fragile balance between occupiers and locals, and the moral cost of duty. Richard Attenborough and Candice Bergen round out the cast, adding heart and tragedy to a story that refuses to offer easy answers. McQueen was nominated for an Oscar for this role, and it's not hard to see why. His performance is raw, understated, and magnetic. You can't look away. And when the film finally erupts into violence, it feels earned, not staged, making the ending all the more haunting. Why does it hold up? Because it's not just about ships and guns, it's about people caught in a storm of politics and power they can't control. The Sand Pebbles isn't just a naval drama, it's a moral gut punch that still resonates decades later. Tora, 1000, 970. Most war films pick a side. Tora, Tora didn't. Released in 1970, this epic dared to split its perspective, showing the attack on Pearl Harbor from both the American and Japanese viewpoints. That decision alone sets it apart. Instead of giving audiences a neat, heroic package, it gave them strategy, preparation, mistakes, and triumphs laid bare for everyone to see. What's remarkable is the sheer authenticity. This wasn't a movie built on melodrama or forced patriotism. Every frame is grounded in detail: the meetings, the hesitations, the coded messages, and finally, the roar of aircraft sweeping down on battleships at anchor. The American sequences were directed by Richard Fleischer, while the Japanese side was handled by Kinji Fukasaku and Toshio Masuda, giving the film a balanced, almost documentary-like tone. But don't mistake that for dullness. The attack scenes are jaw-dropping, staged with practical effects and full-scale pyrotechnics. When explosions rip through the harbor, you don't feel like you're watching Hollywood trickery. You feel like you've been dropped into the 7th of December 1941. The movie doesn't just show action. It shows how miscommunication, arrogance, and underestimation can shape history. Why does it hold up? Because it treats history with respect, while still delivering spectacle. No exaggerated villains, no sugarcoating. Just the hard truth of two nations colliding in one of the most famous naval strikes of all time. Half a century later, Tora remains one of the most ambitious and balanced naval dramas ever put on screen. Hellboats, 1970. If Tora was about global-scale drama, Hellboats zooms in on something leaner, meaner, and grittier. Released in 1970, this British war film follows daring motor torpedo boat raids in the Mediterranean during World War II. It doesn't have the star-studded cast of Midway or the massive set pieces of In Harm's Way. But what it does have is grit, the kind of stripped-down tension that comes from a small crew taking on impossible odds. The story revolves around Commander Jeffords, played by James Franciscus, who leads a squadron of fast, lightly armored boats against heavily defended ports. These missions aren't about glory, they're about survival. The boats dart in under cover of night, unleash chaos, and race back out before they're obliterated. Watching it, you can feel the spray in your face and the engines straining as danger closes in. What makes Hellboats stand out is its focus on the little guy. These weren't massive carriers or battleships. They were small crews in fragile vessels, gambling everything on speed and daring. The film doesn't shy away from the danger, and while it's a product of its time, a bit stiff in dialogue, a bit rough in pacing, it captures the high-wire adrenaline of naval raids better than many bigger-budget productions. Why does it hold up? Because it reminds you that not all naval warfare was grand strategy and massive fleets. Sometimes, it was a handful of sailors on a boat barely bigger than a bus, charging straight into danger. That raw, underdog energy still lands decades later. Midway, 1976. If there's a Mount Rushmore of naval war dramas, Midway deserves a spot. Released in 1976, this all-star epic retells the pivotal Pacific battle that turned the tide of World War II. Think of every major actor in Hollywood at the time, and chances are they're in here. Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, Robert Mitchum, Glenn Ford, James Coburn, even a young Tom Selleck. It's the kind of cast list that makes you check twice just to believe it. The film blends drama with actual combat footage, splicing real battle scenes into Hollywood spectacle. The result is uneven at times, sure, but when it works, it's powerful. The focus is on both the American and Japanese sides, showing the cat-and-mouse intelligence games, the high-stakes carrier battles, and the human drama behind every decision. Henry Fonda as Admiral Nimitz radiates calm authority, while Heston's fictional officer adds emotional stakes through his fractured relationship with his son. The mix of historical figures and invented characters keeps the story engaging while still paying homage to the real men who fought. What makes Midway stick isn't just the scale, though that's impressive. It's the way it captures the razor-thin margin of chance that defined the battle. One delayed takeoff, one misread signal, and history could have gone very differently. Watching it, you can feel the weight of every roll of the dice. Why does it hold up? Because it's one of the last of the old-school war epics, combining Hollywood star power with respect for history. Even with its flaws, Midway remains a gripping reminder of just how fragile and decisive the naval battles of the Pacific truly were. The Battle of Britain, 1969. Yes, it's best known as an air war film, but let's be clear, without the naval element, the Battle of Britain would have been a very different story. Released in 1969, this sprawling production captured the desperate summer of 1940, when the skies above Britain became the front line. But beneath those skies was the Channel, where the Royal Navy waited as the last line of defense should the invasion actually begin. The film itself is massive in scope. Produced with international cooperation, it brought together authentic aircraft, veteran pilots as consultants, and a starry cast that included Laurence Olivier, Michael Caine, and Trevor Howard. What makes the naval side so essential is how the film keeps reminding you of the looming danger. If the Air Force failed, the Navy would face the impossible task of stopping an invasion fleet crossing the Channel. It's an unspoken but constant pressure, a reminder that the sea was every bit as critical as the sky. On screen, we see warships patrolling, commanders preparing, and the delicate coordination between air and sea that ultimately kept Britain standing. The naval presence isn't flashy here, but it grounds the stakes. This wasn't just about planes dogfighting in the clouds. It was about defending an island, and that meant ships, sailors, and a thin blue line of steel across the Channel. Why does it hold up? Because it's not just spectacle. Though the aerial combat remains jaw-dropping even today, it's a complete portrait of a nation on the edge, with the Navy waiting in the wings as the last shield. In the Battle of Britain, the sea may not hog the spotlight, but it's the silent force shaping the entire story. So, there you have it, 12 naval war dramas from the 1,950 seconds through the 1,970 seconds that still hold their own, decades later. They may not have CGI waves or digital fleets, but they've got something better: grit, authenticity, and the kind of storytelling that pulls you straight into the storm. Which of these classics do you think still rules the seas? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more deep dives into the legends of cinema. After all, history's oceans are wide, and we've only just begun charting them.